Okay, we got a little bit more complicated ones here. That was just my son falling out of his chair. Never mind that. All right, we want to start out with the same thing. So domain. Again, we cannot divide by 0. You can't see anything now. So if you plug in, you can plug in anything you want except -4. If you plug in -4, you're going to have a problem. So that means we have a vertical asymptote at -4. So let's go ahead and put that in here. Okay, I'm going to erase that so you can actually see what's going on. Your horizontal asymptote, that's this guy right here. So our horizontal asymptote is y equals 2. So our range is all real numbers except 2. So here's our horizontal asymptote. Okay, so again, this provides us a structure so we kind of know where our graph should be located. Now we are still going to plug in points, so we have good anchors so we know where stuff goes. Again, start with your vertical asymptote. Now we know we can't plug that in, it's not going to be anything there. We want to pick points on either side of that. So maybe -5, -6, -3, -2. Okay, so if I plug in -6, that's going to give me -1 divided by -2, so 1/2 plus 2, so 2.5. If I plug in -5, that's going to give me -1 divided by -1, which is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. I'm going to plug in -3. That gives me -1 divided by +1. So plus 2. And if I plug in -2, that's going to give me -1/2. So I think 1.5. Hopefully that's right. Okay, again, I'm just plugging those in. You can use your calculators to get those values if you want. Let's graph those. So -6, 2.5, -5, 3. So our graph is going to look like this. -3, 1, and -2, 1.5. So our graph looks like this. Notice what effect this having the -1 here had. Before our graph was in the top right and bottom left, and now we've switched that. Okay, so that's what effect the negative will have on it. Okay, last one for our video notes. Our domain, again, we're going to look at our denominator. It's all real numbers, except x cannot be 2, which means we have a vertical asymptote at 2. Our horizontal asymptote is this number out here, y equals -1. Which means our range is all real numbers except y cannot be -1. So here is our horizontal asymptote. Okay. Let's erase that so we can see what's going on. We're going to plug in values. Again, we want to have our vertical asymptote is 2. We're going to put that in the middle. We can't plug that in, it's undefined. But I'm going to pick points close to that. So maybe 1 and 0, and 3 and 4. Okay, so if I plug in 0, that's -5 divided by -2, which is 2.5 minus 1, excuse me, which is 1.5. If I plug in 1, that gives me -5 divided by -1, which is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. I can't plug in 2. If I plug in 3, that gives me -5 divided by 1. So -5 minus 1 is -6. If I plug in 4, that gives me -5 divided by 2, which is -2.5 minus 1, which is -3.5. Okay. If you need to show more work as you're plugging these in, or if you need to use your calculator, that's fine. I know I was kind of popping them through in my head. So we have 0, 1.5, 1, 4. So this is going to look something like this. And then 3, -6, and 4, -3.5. And again, since that value was negative, since we had a -5 here on top, that caused our graph to be in the upper left and bottom right, rather than what we had on the previous problems. So hopefully that helps you out with your asymptotes and how these graphs work. Your assignment is going to be to finish the rest of these notes. Just finish out these problems, very similar procedures. Make sure you know how to find that vertical and horizontal asymptote. That provides the structure. But also plug in a few points so that way those graphs are anchored. You know for sure where they are and a general idea of what their shape is. Tomorrow we're going to get a little bit more complicated rational functions that we're going to need to graph.